was born in North York. I know people say good afternoon back here. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. That's more like everybody. Welcome to the beautiful University of York. I'm James. I'm your compere today. Before we get going, it's been a big day for me. It was the first time I've ever had my baby Olive on our own overnight. And when you get to my age, you get a bit nostalgic. And I was sat looking at her thinking, what type of life will you have? And my mum came over with some documents of my granddad, and I was looking at it. When my granddad turned 18 in 1935, there were 5,000 people in the UK who went to university. When my dad turned 18, there were 50. When my brother went, there were 350,000 from the noughties. By the time I went, there was 500,000. Universities are the single best tool we have to grow the economy, to grow our places. And when I think about the type of life that I want Olive to have, I think about her coming to institutions like this, being taught by the people who are presenting to us this afternoon. Our universities are wonderful places, we should cherish them, and they make our places what they are. So before we get talking on the 3 minute thesis, which I'm so glad and welcome you all today, I think it's just important to remember how all of this is possible. So today, it is my absolute privilege and delight to introduce the 3 minute thesis competition. Finalists. There are some strict rules. Do not break them or I'll tell you off. You have a single static PowerPoint slide. There are no transitions, no animations or movement of any description. There are no additional electronic media. No additional props. I noticed none of you come in costumes. Good start. If you exceed 3 minutes, you will be disqualified. Presentations, spoken word. No poems, no songs, no interpretive dance, whatever you may else choose to do. Presentations are considered to have commenced when you start your presentation, and the decision of the adjudicating panel is final. Oh. Audience, has everybody got their phone off? Yeah? You've been warned. There is a People's Choice vote which will be online after the presentations. If you do not have a mobile phone with you, some paper will be provided and instructions will come up. There are 2 criteria through which the presentations will be judged: comprehension and content, and engagement and communication. Our colleagues are all doing wonderfully clever, brilliant, interesting things, but how well can they tell you about them? In order to help us with that judgment, we have a starred judging panel with us. We have Professor Catherine Arnold, Dean of the York Graduate Research School, University of York. Catherine, can you give us a wave? Thanks, Catherine. Abhishek Das, Head of Structured Finance at, I'm going to pronounce it, Kaisha Bank, alumni of the University of York. Abhishek. Harry Whittaker, author and broadcaster.
Well, just to differentiate myself.
Oh, Harry, you're such a professional, so much time to practice. Linda Cofergino, University Impact Manager, University of York. And Francisca de Rosario, 3NT 2023 finalist, People's Choice winner. Congratulations again. Yeah, let's have a round of applause for last year, yeah. The important bit, the prizes. Should you come first, you will win an iPad. Second prize, £150 of Amazon vouchers, which you may choose to put towards an iPad. Third prize, £75 Amazon vouchers. People's Choice, £75 of Amazon vouchers. Plus, the winner of the competition gets to take part in the National 3NT 2024 semi-final. I'm led to believe that University of York contestants have some success in reaching their national finals too. You are not only representing yourselves, but your entire region. No pressure. So, are you ready to go on with it? Great. If I may please welcome our first speaker, Alejandro Moreno Jimenez, Economics and Related Studies, the Dance of Money Mapping Mexico's Municipal Spending Moves. Alejandro.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Public Finance Dance in Mexico, where every peso tells a story of interconnectedness and fiscal dependence. Imagine a dance of money between cities. This dance will be affected by different variables, such as poverty, crime, bad governance. It is all these variables and the rate and magnitude of the dance the motivation of my research. My model starts as follows. Imagine that the money of my city starts dancing. This will increase the dance of the money of my neighbor city. This is not just happening today. It will happen tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, and then every day, every year. As you can guess, because of the movement of my hands and because dancing every day could not be funny, this is turning into a toxic cycle. Then, instead of having a happy dance, we will have what I call a dance epidemic. Dance epidemic is the main finding of my research and is having bad impact and negative results for the Mexican citizens because it's increasing their cost and is reducing their welfare. Then, in my conclusion, I list different policy implications and policy recommendations. And then we will move from this dance epidemic to a happier and more harmonic dance, where the governments can improve the happiness and the welfare of all the Mexican citizens. Thank you so much.
Next up, we have Grace Murray, who's studying English and related literature, a history of useless books. Grace.
What's the point of books? I don't mean e-books or audiobooks or any of the other ways we consume our media today. I mean the printed book. That format's a little bit old-fashioned now. It was first produced in England in 1477. The story of my thesis begins 80 years later, when print had been around for a little while and, not unlike the internet today, had wormed its way into daily life. By 1550, people in Tudor England were starting to ask themselves what role print as a technology played in the way they learn new things. What are books for? Why do we read them? What do we want to get out of them? What does it mean for a book to be useful? And what might it mean for it to be useless? The satirical image of the book fool, brushing flies away from useless books he never reads, is a 500-year-old answer to the point of books, but it's not the only one. A 2023 article called Useless Studies ranked university degrees on the basis of how rich those 3 years of academic reading make you 20 years later, with maths, economics, medicine and computing at the top, and the creative arts at the bottom. As we enter an age in which AI competes with human writers, there's a lot at stake for the arts in the kinds of books and the kinds of knowledge that we decide are useless. I'm a historian of reading, and I'm interested in how and why people read books in the past, because it can tell us a lot about why we value particular kinds of knowledge today. In my PhD, I set out to understand what 16th and 17th century people thought made their books useful, by returning to arguably the most useful genre of all, instruction manuals. 16th century England saw a boom in self-help books that promised their readers would learn how to do something, whether it be gardening, sailing the ocean, or just how to add up. These skills were intended to transform readers into good English citizens who could contribute to England's ambitions for an empire. But by paying attention to where and how they asked to be read, and notes left in their pages by readers in the past, my research has shown that instruction manuals were read not just for practical reasons, but because they were fashionable, creative, or just plain fun. Though the manuals themselves insisted that they would be useful and profitable, these wrong readings can help us to see that the idea of the useful book has always depended on social and political pressures. Today, as the creative power of the arts and humanities increasingly faces accusations of being useless, the past is an important reminder that utility depends on where you stand. Misreading instructions help their readers to recognise that there are some kinds of knowledge, like how it feels to laugh or enjoy a good book, that may not turn a profit, but is worth its weight in gold. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Next up, we have Jack Stenning's biology. Jack's talk is Catching Cancer Resistance with Calling Cards. Jack.
In the UK, one woman is diagnosed with breast cancer every 10 minutes. 1 in 4 of those women will go on to develop resistance to the treatment that they're given, leading to a more aggressive disease with fewer treatment options. But why? What makes these patients different? Well, it's complicated. You see, most breast cancers are driven by estrogen. Estrogen is a hormone that coordinates many different roles in breast cells. By binding to a protein, a type of biological machine, estrogen can promote cells to grow and specialize. However, promoting cell growth makes estrogen a prime target to be hijacked in breast cancer to promote resistance to therapy. Now, the tricky part is that there are many different strategies that breast cancer can use to manipulate estrogen to promote resistance to therapy. And across the thousands of cells in a tumour, each one can employ a slightly different strategy to the next. And we don't currently have a way of tracking what estrogen is doing in every single tumour cell. So that is exactly what my research is trying to do. I grow cancer cells that are either resistant or are sensitive to treatment in a dish, so they form mini tumours. And my work also involved creating a mutant version of the estrogen protein to put into these cells. Now, the mutation in this protein causes it to deposit a calling card whenever it completes a job in that cell. Now, these cards aren't left behind by a cat burglar after stealing all your valuables, but instead they are permanent tags of the jobs estrogen promotes in every single tumour cell. So I can use these calling cards to track the jobs estrogen promotes in my resistant and sensitive cancers, revealing the strategies that resistant cancers use and show how they differ from those of sensitive cancers, revealing how breast cancer takes its first steps towards resistance so that we can stop it. By understanding the earliest steps in resistance to common cancer treatments, we can develop new treatments that meet the clinical need of thousands of women worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Next up, we have Minahil Khan on physics and engineering technology, talking about keeping liquids free from bacterial contamination. Minahil.
Are you sure your water is clean, considering all the reports about contamination of rivers and oceans in the news? Are you sure your detergents and your skincare products are free of contamination? How do even companies constantly check if everything is clean? Well, bacterial contamination is a huge problem around the world, as they cause many diseases and destroy industrial products. If bacteria contaminates an industrial production plant, they can end up in your food and drinks, in your cosmetics, and even in your cleaning products. So far, we do have techniques to detect bacteria, But to avail them, we need to take a sample, take them to the lab and test them. And it takes days to get results. And to be honest, these techniques are pretty expensive. To solve this problem, we need to take inspiration from devices like COVID test or pregnancy test kit. We need technology that is simple and affordable, able to monitor constantly, and able to detect bacteria before they become an issue. So, to achieve that, my project has a unique concept. Some bacteria can visibly glow, but not all of them. However, all these bacteria have a hidden glow in them that can only be detected by very expensive and sensitive cameras. I'm making a device that can detect this bacteria and enhance its glow to be visible with an average camera. For that, I have developed this chip on a glass that has lines of about 100 times thinner than a hair strand on it. When I shine light on this chip, it responds to that hidden faint glow, captures it, and enhances it so that I can see it with an average camera, just like your phone camera. With this simple, affordable, and compact device, I can detect bacteria by simply shining light on it. By using this device, we can constantly monitor our pipes, giving us live and instant results through our phone or laptop. And if we can provide this simple method to monitor bacteria, we can be sure that our water and all other products are free from bacteria and clean. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manal. Next up, we have Nicola O'Donnell from Health Sciences, who is talking about Through Their Eyes, Life After Retinoblastoma. Nicola.
Imagine being a new parent, taking a photograph of your baby. The flash from the camera illuminates her pupil, making her eye look white. You show this to a doctor and are rushed halfway up the country to a specialist in something called retinoblastoma. You've never heard of it, and you're horrified to learn that it's a rare type of eye cancer, mostly affecting children under 5. 10 years later, and your child has survived, but she's had her eye removed to save her life. Others like her will be living with facial changes due to radiotherapy or with visual impairment. In some cases, the diagnosis is more complex. Your child has a faulty gene, meaning that every child that they go on to have has a 50% chance of the same diagnosis. With high survival rates in the UK, the odds are in your favour. Yet whilst the disease itself might be gone, the impact on how your child thinks and feels can be long-lasting, impacting life in unexpected and hidden ways. And you aren't alone. Approximately 50 children a year are diagnosed with retinoblastoma in the UK. Yet there's limited research into survivors' experiences, and this is the focus of my PhD. I want to understand how cancer impacts how people think and feel. So I interviewed 32 retinoblastoma survivors. I'm a qualitative researcher. This means that I deal with narratives and experiences rather than numbers and statistics. I explored how young people navigate life beyond their diagnosis and treatment, including the emotional effects on how they view the world and their place within it. Young people shared experiences of medical trauma from their childhood, including difficult memories from treatment that often popped up when they least expected it, like using teenage spot treatments and the smell transporting them back to being in hospital. They also shared experiences of bullying and identity-related distress. I have combined this with a review of what support already exists for wider cancer survivors to develop a new tailored tool for retinoblastoma. I hope that this means that children who are diagnosed today and who become teenagers in 10 years' time don't have to experience the long-term psychological effects that so many others have. My research reminds us that cancer and the impact of it don't stop when you hear the words in remission. And as more children survive rare cancer diagnoses, it is imperative that we provide long-term support tools to help them manage difficult thoughts and feelings. And this is what my PhD is doing for retinoblastoma. Imagine being a parent of a child diagnosed with retinoblastoma and knowing that support is available. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Next, we have Iffy Wang from Archaeology on creative heritage engagement, commercialisation versus the therapeutic role. Iffy.
When you hear the word museum, how do you feel it connects to your life? Let me tell you a story. One day in London, a guy asked me out on a date to a late Friday night event at the Victoria and Albert Museum. I was shocked by this invitation as a foreigner in here, because people seem to prefer pubs or dinners for a date in the UK. So I was curious about how young people from different cultural backgrounds feel events at the cultural institutions, and whether more creative engagement could help these institutions to reduce their financial pressures, which were highlighted throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, whether cultural interactive experiences could release mental health issues arising from the pandemic by increasing the connection between individuals with their local community. So, my PhD research focuses on how the pandemic influenced public participation and the creative economy within Chinese and UK heritage management during this period. I will compare national heritage institutions and art festivals in both countries to understand how they engage in creative economic activities, provide therapeutic experiences, and handle tensions between using heritage for commercial purpose and therapeutic role. I will also test how cultural institutions improve community well-being and economic resilience, how the pandemic reshaped their operations, and evaluating whether this engagement could offer good value for payment and therapeutic experience to satisfy audience expectations. I will use hybrid methods, include interviews, surveys, and log tickets of secondary and primary data to understand public and institutional perspectives. By understanding these dynamics, we can better navigate the challenges and opportunities facing heritage institutions and art festivals in a post-pandemic world. Thank you.
Thank you again, Pete. Next up, we have Sabina Musialov, who's studying biology, and she's talking to us about the secrets of photosynthesis. Sabina.
None of us would be here without plants. They make the oxygen that we breathe and the food that we eat. And they do all of this through photosynthesis. But I'll tell you a secret. Plants are actually not that good at it. The culprit is rubisco. Rubisco is the molecular machine responsible for capturing CO2. It takes it, adds to a different compound, and then can be used for energy. But rubisco can also get confused, so it frequently captures oxygen instead. Think of it as if you were to put peas instead of chocolate in your cookies. Oh. Well, not only did you not get the chocolate, but you wasted all the other ingredients. And exactly the same way, plants have to spend a lot of energy to recycle the product of rubisco's carelessness. Preventing Rubisco's mistakes can be very important in the context of farming. It could prevent using excessive resources such as fertilizer or land and water, or it could allow plants to grow bigger and have better yields. If only there was a way of making it more efficient. Luckily, I know somebody who can help. Every day in the lab, I work with those amazing little organisms called algae. You've definitely met them before, even if you don't know it. They live everywhere in the water, in the oceans, in the seas, even here in the campus lake. And because there's even less CO2 in the water than the air, they've had to evolve clever workarounds in order to photosynthesize. And they're really good at it. In fact, algae assimilate as much CO2 as land plants while using 20 times less Rubisco. So, what is the trick? There are many, but the main one is to put all of your Rubisco into one place, and then, using a special network of pipes, pump so much CO2 that there's just no oxygen to be found. We still don't know a lot of details. I look at algae using electron microscopes to understand how do they keep all the Rubisco in one place, but also how do they prevent CO2 from just leaking to the outside. By understanding every step of the process, we can then try and rebuild it in plants such as wheat, rice, or potatoes, and create climate-resilient crops that could feed the world's growing population. Who would have thought that such a little algae can have such a big impact? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sabina, for that. It looks like I'm being counted down. Next up, we have Tundi Sariga. Tundi is... one second. Have you not got the format yet? Tundi is an archaeology student and is going to talk to us about can archaeology build a better society in Indonesia. Tundi.
How many of you in this room would think that archaeology could establish and develop a nation's interest or direction? I imagine not many of you would believe in that. But I believe that is the only way, at least in this case, Indonesia. But before that, I want you to visualize Indonesia, the fourth most populous country in the world, with more than 1,300 groups, 715 languages, 17,000 islands, and at least 5 different layers of culture. Astonishing? No, it is remarkable. But sadly, many people only know Indonesia as Bali, or a country somewhere in Asia. My research, however, investigates the question of what can heritage offer for Indonesia's future by looking at the public perception on Indonesian heritage. I analyzed conversation and text, 12 interviews, and 238 surveys. And through all that, the findings of the present study highlight the importance of heritage in Indonesia and found 4 values of what heritage could offer. Heritage is experience, heritage is identity and ideology, heritage as memory, and heritage as a place. And Bhinneka Tunggal Ika is one of the answers of this study. Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, translated as unity in diversity. And it's our national's motto. It signifies the importance of living in unity amongst Indonesia's diversity in culture, belief, and ethnicity. This considered as ideology and identity values for most respondents. Cultural and heritage discourses in Indonesia must have an important part, and archaeology, through heritage, is pivotal in placing the vision. Political will from government and experts are fundamental too in this vision. But don't forget, public participation is also critical in this process. Although this study is one of the first in Indonesia, archaeology expected to be a new way of advancing the Indonesia's future. Sounds cliche, but if we could walk the talk, and we, as Indonesians, could really absorb and practice the motto, and by putting all the 4 values in action, might going to rock the world just using heritage and diversity alone. In this study, the archaeology in developing Indonesia are very critical because of the diversity that Indonesians have. And I believe through this study could enhance Indonesia's power to become a great country someday. How about now? Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Yumika Ono, who is studying chemistry. Their talk is Catch Me If You Can, Sweet Solution for Cancer Treatment. Yumika.
How much do you know about cancer and cancer treatment? If you don't know much, don't worry. I'm researching on a new way to help the body's natural defenses find and attack cancer cells. So let me tell you how I do it. First, I will introduce the characters. On the left, we have healthy cell, which makes up our body. In the middle, smiling evilly, is our enemy, the cancer cell. At the bottom, we have an immune cell, which patrols our body like a police guard, looking for enemies. You might notice the healthy cell is covered with tiny pink objects. These are sugars, which are key to our story. They coat the cell like a sugary shell of a peanut M&M. And the immune cell check these sugars to identify if the cell is a healthy cell or an enemy. Like police would run a background ID check on a suspect. However, the cancer cell has mastered the art of deception. They display the same sugar as a healthy cell, tricking immune cell into leaving them alone. Let's call this sugar sugar A. My research aims to change this cancer's sugar A to a different sugar, sugar B. This helped the immune cell recognize the cancer cell as an enemy and launch an attack. For this, I changed the cancer cell's DNA code to produce sugar B. And I observed these sugars and carefully checking for the best condition to change sugars. But hopefully, in the near future, my research will help the body identify and target the sugar-coated criminals and change the way we treat cancers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yumika. And with that, 9 fascinating talks, 27 minutes of incredible learning, and not a single speaker went over time. Can we have a round of applause for our speakers again, please? We have a very special treat for you before the results are announced. I am delighted, beyond delighted, actually, to welcome Julian, who is coming to talk to us today about his work in archaeology. Julian, you have worked in archaeology for 30 years? 50? I'm not sure if you'll be under or oversized that document. And you are well known for your television appearances, radio, your archaeological work, and other amazing achievements in the field. Julian is going to talk to us for 15 to 20 minutes about some of the work he's been up to, and I think it is going to be a fantastic talk. Can we have a round of applause for Julian, please?
It's always a bit worrying when you get an introduction like that, because there's a lot to live up to. I'm effectively the non-academic stand-in entertainment while the judges' votes and your votes are being cast. But it's great to be here. I've been involved with the Festival of Archaeology now for a few years. I was invited up to do a talk probably about 4 years ago thought that it was just such a brilliant event that I'd managed to get myself invited back every year since to do something different. So tomorrow I'm leading some sessions for blind and partially sighted people, explaining the power of archaeology. So I am an archaeologist. I am not the Julian Richards from York University. It's very confusing. You've got Professor Julian Richards, who's a Viking specialist. My speciality is prehistory and Stonehenge, so we occasionally get invites. He'll be asked to talk about Stonehenge, I'll be asked to talk about the Vikings, and we just simply swap email addresses. The only major confusion was when we were both booked to the same conference and they couldn't believe that there were two Julian Richardses. He got there first, so he got the room. So I am an archaeologist, and here I am in my natural habitat in a field covered in mud with a small trowel exploring. And the whole thing about this year's theme is it's the power of, isn't it? It's the power of, and to me, it's the power of curiosity, of exploring, of wanting to find out things, which of course is epitomised by what all you PhD students are doing. You know, you're inquiring, you're trying to find out. And that's something that is key to archaeology. So I was a curious child, not in the sense of being strange, well perhaps I was, but I was very nosy. I wanted to find things out. I was one of those irritating children who constantly asked questions to the annoyance of adults. And so I'd morphed after a few years from that to that, which is me in my incarnation as an archaeologist. And I started digging in 1979, so that's, no, hang on, 69, I got the chronology wrong. And in between those two was a school career, which was fairly awful, to be quite honest. I didn't enjoy it, I didn't learn anything, because there was no sense of inquiry. You were told things and you repeated them. That was how particularly history was taught. And I had an interest in the past, but it wasn't stimulated by that way of teaching. I was interested in the medieval period, and all you were ever told about was about kings and popes and battles and dates. And what you never found out about was the ordinary people. There was nothing about them. Apart from the fact not a lot was written about them, there was no sense of inquiry. And so that, to me, is where archaeology came in, because I ended up on an excavation in my hometown of Nottingham, and suddenly the past came to life. And I think, most of us, hopefully all of us here, have got a passion for something. And there was often that awakening moment where you sort of thought, right, this is what I'm interested in, this is what I want to study. And for me, it was digging in Nottingham, excavating pits and ditches, and finding objects as well. And I've just been listening, in fact, I've been chairing a talk by Kevin Leahy about Anglo-Saxon cemetery archaeology, and it's the power of objects to tell stories that is so important. So, we were digging trenches through, this is the ditch that protected Nottingham from the Vikings. And as you can see, it was in the days before health and safety regulations had been thought about, because it was, in retrospect, very dangerous. But digging down through the layers, suddenly I was unearthing the history of the place that I lived in. And it actually brought it to life. And that sense that objects can tell stories as well, I think that was where that, for me, was awakened. Because I remember finding a bronze key, this sounds a bit unpleasant, at the bottom of a medieval cesspit. It didn't smell after 700 or 800 years, but I remember holding this key and thinking, how had it got there? How had it ended up in this cesspit? And my imagination created a story about the master of the house coming back late one night from having been down the pub, and suddenly, he went for a pee, and then it suddenly heard a splash and thought, oh, there goes the door key, but didn't really want to fish it out. That's probably not true, but it's, again, that idea that it can tell you can tell stories from objects. So, that was really where it all started for me. Just as an aside, I found it very amusing subsequently to find out that Nottingham was founded by a Viking called Snot. And the first excavation that I did was in the basement of a former handkerchief factory. So I thought there was a nice juxtaposition there of those two things. Teachers at school did not inspire me. They, as I say, it was write this down, and you were more marked for your handwriting than for any originality of thought. For me, going to university, when I eventually got there, after 3 attempts, to Reading University, it was suddenly totally different, because here you were encouraged to question standard orthodoxy, which is what we all should do. Don't just accept these are the facts, this is what you're told. Ask that question, why? How do we know that? And can we find out ways of interrogating that standard orthodoxy and changing it? And this person was completely inspiring. This is Richard Bradley, not from that time, this is Richard in more recent years, who was a new, young prehistory lecturer, only a couple of years older than me. He, yes, an interesting character, Richard, brain the size of a planet, possibly the most impractical person that I've ever met in my life. But he would actually challenge things that he'd said as well as what other people had said. So you'd go to a lecture one week and he'd come in and tell you all about the Iron Age. And then the next week he'd come back and go, you remember what I told you last week? It's all wrong. I've rethought it. And that was quite confusing to start with, because you thought teachers are supposed to just tell you things. But then it made you realise that these were ideas that were developing. And that actually you could play a part in developing those ideas as well, even as an undergraduate, let alone as a postgraduate. Richard also introduced me to the dark side. He persuaded me that medieval archaeology wasn't the path I wanted to take, it was prehistory. And actually, it's much more exciting because there are no written records. You based your understanding of the past on what you dig up, which is why it was so exciting. So I got to do survey work on the Berkshire Downs and find sites and excavate sites. And it was my first introduction to human remains. And again, that sort of questioning process. I knew as an archaeologist what I had to do. I had to clean the burial, I had to photograph it, draw it, and then go through the peculiar process of dismantling a person, putting the right hand in one bag, the left hand in another bag. But with the awareness that actually this is a person. It's not just an archaeological specimen, it's a person who had a life and beliefs and who was buried with care by the people who survived him, or him in this case. And that, again, sowed seeds of inquiry. But at this time, in the 70s, there wasn't a huge amount that you could tell from a burial. And then Stonehenge, my great passion. The joy of being asked, would you like to study the Stonehenge landscape? Well, there wasn't really any answer apart from yes, I would. And I was very lucky to spend 10 years exploring that archaeological landscape, asking lots of questions. Why was Stonehenge built? How was it built? My first excavation at a time when I was willing to be photographed stripped to the waist wearing rather skimpy denim shorts. Not anymore, you'd be glad to hear. I don't think I could shovel out of a ditch that deep. But it introduced me to a whole new world of questioning, because Stonehenge is a place that encourages that. People can have their own opinions about it, whether they're archaeologically based, whether they're theologically based, or whether they're just plain wacky. It's an area, it's a cauldron of ideas, which is what I've found so fascinating over the years. So it's not just a pile of rocks in a field, as a T-shirt that appears sometimes says. It's a fascinating monument with an incredible history. We can only hope to understand why it was built by trying to understand the minds of the people, which is obviously what archaeology is not very good at. It's good at facts, but trying to understand the way people thought. Was it to do with the summer solstice? Was it to do with the winter solstice? Was it a place of healing, a place of death? Lots of conflicting and interesting ideas which are still raging. And then I get questions like, how was it built? A question that's often asked. English Heritage used to sell this postcard at Stonehenge, but they stopped doing it because it says how they built Stonehenge. And some people actually believed that dinosaurs were used in the construction of Stonehenge, which, as you're an intelligent audience, you realise that dinosaurs had died out a long time before Stonehenge was constructed. But again, it's one of those questions. How do you find out? How do you inquire? You can do illustrations, which show quite clearly that Stonehenge was built by Kirk Douglas, assisted by Michael Heseltine and George Best, which it wasn't. But, how do you do it? Well, you can experiment. And I've been very lucky because I was involved in an experiment moving full-size replicas of the stones. That's 40 tons of concrete with a team of people, 130 people pulling. And every time I look at this picture, I think, what did the 3 people who were pushing think that they were contributing to this effort? I really don't understand that. And the key thing about this is that it's the same with any experiment. If you do an experiment and that works, that's not the way it was done. It is a way that it could have been done. And I think that's hugely important in any experimental work. If it works, yep, that worked, but that's not to say that there are other methods that also might work. So, that's what experimental archaeology has taught me over the years. And that initial encounter with a person from the past, was what led to a series I did called Meet the Ancestors, where we took burials, we explored burials, where you can tell initially from the way somebody lies in a grave how old that grave is going to be. That's prehistoric, that can't be anything else. But then we can move beyond that into what forensic science and science can tell us. We can now give an idea of what somebody looked like through using facial reconstruction. We can look at isotopes and radiocarbon dates to precisely date somebody and tell us where they've come from. We can now tell that this woman who was found in Spitalfields in London was born in Rome, the first person in Roman Britain to be identified as actually being born in Rome. And then, of course, you've got celebrated prehistoric examples like the Amesbury Archer, this man who initially when he was found was thought to be from continental Europe, and isotopes proved that yes, he was. It was something quite logical. He's buried with a lot of continentally inspired objects, so it's quite logical that he too had come from the continent. And of course, this is where the tabloids seize on things. Initially, it was thought that he was German. So, it's Stonehenge, Achtung, Great British Monument, may have been built by a German. It's very worrying the way your archaeological information is sometimes interpreted by the tabloid newspapers. And he's not German, he actually comes from the Austrian Alps, and he didn't build Stonehenge. But this is a different way of interpreting the information. So to me, something like this, it epitomises everything that I'm fascinated by, because it's multifaceted. There's the archaeology, there's the art that's associated with it. There's so many different lines of inquiries in which this monument inspires people. It's led me to collect weird and wonderful Stonehenge-related souvenirs, hideous pink china. And here's an interesting thing. How come you get Stonehenge with Disney characters on a stamp issued by the small Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan? That is a very, very weird mixture, isn't it? But it just shows that it is something that is universally fascinating. It's universally an object of curiosity. It's enabled me to collaborate with artists. The Turner Prize-winning Jeremy Deller, in one of his recent works, the rather controversial Wiltshire Before Christ, in which he announced that the A303 was built by immigrants. Very interesting character, Jeremy. So utterly fascinating, and it's led me to continue to be curious about things and want to find out about things. So you meet some interesting people as well. What prompts people to turn up at Stonehenge dressed like this? Who knows? Who knows? So at the end of what is now was it 30 years you said?
30 years.
I think yes, it's now 55 years actually of working in archaeology. People say, how do you look back at your career? And I say, well, there are two definitions of career. One is to progress through your profession, and the other is to rush wildly out of control. And I ask them to judge what they think applies most to me. I think it's probably that one, to be quite honest, because there's never been any logic to it. But I have been driven, and still am driven, by that sense of curiosity, which I think is what all of us here share. What the people who are doing the PhD research that's what drives them. That's what drives us to be here at this wonderful Festival and Ideas event, which is just such a joy to be part of, because it is just this great cauldron of creativity and inquiry, and also of communication, of communicating to so many different people at different age levels and different abilities. And that's what's such a joy to be here and part of it. So thank you for listening to my brief ramble, and I look forward to hearing the results. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julian. And because you are modest as well as brilliant, your works include Stonehenge story so far, correct? I'd encourage colleagues to go out and rush out to purchase it. Meet the Ancestors and Blood of the Vikings, which were BBC documentaries and are available on iPlayer. Please do go out and get them. Our judges have arrived, and I think we are ready for the results. Kate, are you ready? Would you like to come up and announce the results?
So, wow, what a fantastic example, a fantastic show of the research that's going on at the University of York. This is absolutely the favourite part of my job. I have the privilege of being Dean of York Graduate Research School, so we've got about 2,300 PhD students here at York. And we've got some of our brightest and best here who have talked to you, and what a great shop window for the cutting edge, the really impactful research that's going on here. So thank you. Everybody's a winner here today because they were all really showed off what they could do as researchers, but also as communicators. And I think that's so fantastic to see. And we place great importance here in York in not only doing amazing research, but being able to tell people about it, and being able to do that in a really way that isn't dumbing down, but it's making it really exciting and interesting to hear. So I'm going to stop waffling now, and I'm going to tell you the results. So, as I said, it was very close. I mean, it was so tight because, I mean, you've seen them. They were all amazing. And we've had quite a long discussion about one of the positions. But without further ado, I am going to announce third place. So if we could have a drum roll, please, for third place. In third place, we have somebody who opened with a gripping and emotive opening line. They were compassionate, they were passionate, and they also told a fantastic story. Please put your hands together for Nicola O'Donnell from Health Sciences. We've got a pose for a photo. Thank you. Brilliant, thank you, Stuart. Right. So, drum roll, please, for second place. So, the next position, the second position, somebody that connected us with things that we care about. They were thought-provoking, and they shone a light on a very complex topic. Put your hands together, please, for Minal Hill Khan. Okay, so the coveted first place. So, again, drum roll, please. Thank you. So, we've got somebody who's an outstanding communicator, who gave us emotion, talked about an emotive subject without being saccharine. Somebody who explained complex ideas in a way that made us all feel clever and made us feel like we really understood what was going on. And somebody who had real style and stage presence. Please put your hand together for Jack Stelling from Biology. So, last but not least, the award that is thanks to you. So thank you so much for engaging with Mentimeter and your paper votes. And it was great to see such engagement from you. And again, thank you for taking part in our event today and giving us your feedback. And that's really fantastic. So we've got the People's Prize. So, drum roll, please. And please welcome back to the stage, Minahil Khan. Okay, well done to everyone. As I said, it's a complete pleasure to welcome you here to University of York, and I hope you've been really impressed with the work of our PhD students.
Right, thank you so much. You remember right at the start, I said I was just so excited and optimistic about my daughter's future as to have the opportunity for a university education. And how could you not, having seen the 9 brilliant participants we've had today? And whether she goes on to look at the dance of money or rhinoblastoma or any other subject, she will be fortunate to be taught by one of the people we've had. So could we please have another round of applause for our 9 participants? A couple of last bits from me, and then we can go enjoy a sunny York, and I'm sure it is always sunny here. Can we have a round of applause for our judges who made today possible? The University of York events team who've put on a wonderful session and a wonderful week. For Julian and his wonderful research, don't forget his book. And finally, thank you to all of you for coming today. The University of York is truly a wonderful institution. Please do check out what else they've going on. If you have the chance to support them and support the future work like this, please choose to do so. And thank you very much for coming. Have a safe journey home. See you later.